Hey sis,
Hey sis.
how you
What's
doing?
what's up? What's up? Everyone else as well. Welcome.
Indeed, this is episode 3 of Hold Up, Let Me Call My Sis,
Bam.
with me, your
Episode 3.
girl T Jamaica Pogue, aka Deconstructing Neuro.
Yes. And me, Lamia Radiant, if you follow me on any Instagram or other social media, which I think it's only Instagram. Um and or you may know me from my other podcast, Y'all Gotta Go With Me. So all right, welcome guys. I'm sure if you are listening, you are here because you're curious to know what kind of crazy deep conversation me and my sister are going to have this week. And yeah, let's jump to it.
Absolutely. Well, before we do,
Mhm.
quick catch up. How you feeling? What's goody?
You know, like full disclosure to the audience, me and my sister, we talk before this
Of
because y'all don't want
course.
to hear everything we got to talk about.
And then also, everything we talk about ain't they business.
And as that too. Which is interesting enough might circle back in a later conversation today about keeping things close to the chest
Mm-hmm.
most of the time. But um yeah, generally like right now I think I am in a really good space. There's been some tumultuousness going on. But I think I'm navigating it well and finding just finding my footing and things like that. So that's kind of where I'm at, and enjoying some time off from work and things. So
Indeed, and I'm kind of in the same boat. I have all of the rest of this month and all of July and August off from work, which is
mm-hmm.
why what I do is so perfect for me because it gives me the opportunity to have that immense amount of time where I can just focus on me and my self improvement as well as
Mm-hmm.
indulging in things that I don't usually have time to do during the months when I work. So
Yeah.
this is actually a perfect setup for me where it's not something that I'm doing year round. And even throughout the year,
Mm-hmm.
I get a week here and a week there um,
Yeah.
to really just like, and I need that. It's kind of perfect for the kind of working environment that I want. And then just getting my shit together for my trip, which we'll talk a little bit more about later in the show. But all that combined got me like extra hype. So cheers
Yeah.
to that.
Yes, yes, baby. Little midday wine that hurt no
I
lie,
mean, not at all. So just let's pretend we in Spain. Let's just pretend we in Spain and we're having tapas, and of course you gotta have a glass of red wine with your tapas.
I
Like,
mean, ironically enough, I mean, I could be wrong. I would love to know the stats, but I wonder like how prevalent alcoholism is in countries that don't make it a big deal, like Italy and
right?
Spain.
I
I'm
don't
sure
know
it's
that.
there,
Oh, of
but
course, because
yeah.
you know, but I don't have the stats either. But I'm pretty sure I've read before that it's not as rampant because
Mm,
alcohol isn't seen as this like forbidden taboo thing. And when
yeah.
you kind of remove that stigma and introduce it to people earlier and with supervision and
Yeah, and within
with
the right
boundaries around
context
it,
where it's more like
exactly.
celebratory or like more of a social thing or like maybe more
Yeah.
less likely to associate it with like depression and stuff.
Uh huh.
I mean, and I would imagine too that other factors, societal factors, are helping them not want to overuse.
Universal healthcare.
I do, I just
100%.
do, well, where that come from? Oh my god! But that's for another conversation, baby. Put a pin in.
Indeed. Because today we are going to be focusing on themes around spirituality, deconstruction from Christianity, and like basic universal truths across various religious teachings.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we can start with a quick background. I think I'll start first because mine didn't run as deeply as yours, and I think you're
Right.
gonna kind of take the
I'm gonna try to
lead
keep
in
it
the
as brief as
conversation.
possible,
I
but
know, right? But just to give a little concise background.
yeah.
So and this goes for both of us, at least this first part. Like we grew up being culturally Christian, but not super practicing Christian. Like,
Mm.
going to church wasn't always a regular thing. There was a small period of time where we were more regularly going to church at this one church that mommy actually became a member of. But other
Mm.
than that, we would maybe go on Easter,
Yeah,
maybe,
the Easter, Christmas. I don't even think we
not
did
even
Christmas. I think it
Christmas.
was
That's
really
what
just
I was saying.
Easter.
Like, we never went to church on Christmas, but Easter a
Heathens,
few
honey.
times.
Heathens.
um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so we grew up kind of culturally Christian, but for me, the first time I like took it upon myself to get involved with church was actually when I was away at college because I joined the gospel choir.
Mm.
And they had like a free shuttle on Sundays from campus to church.
Yeah.
And I joined the gospel choir at my college, but then I also would go to church with people from the gospel choir that would go.
Right.
And wound up like kind of joining the church, but not really because I was still a college student. And my last semester at school was a crazy one. So, like, not only was I not in the
Mm.
gospel choir, but I wasn't going to school or anything. But then when I
Mm-hmm.
came home, I had a couple of years of wilding out. And then when I moved to Philly, I actually moved in with y'all when you were preparing to have Biscuit Whiskey,
Oh
the
yeah.
bestest little dude.
I did.
And then I started going to, the church that we went to in Philly, and it became a major part of my life. Because
Mm-hmm.
at that point in my life, what I remember is I felt lost and directionless.
Mm-hmm.
I even had a conversation with Daddy where I was like, I don't know why I'm here, and it really like affected him.
Yeah. It's
And
real. It's
yeah,
real.
and so as we'll talk about a little bit later, being in that kind of place where like things aren't going great and you need some sort of salvation, something to look forward to, something that's bigger than you. You have to try to make sense of what's going on so that you can feel
Mm-hmm.
some sense of stability. And having always kind of like a peripheral or a tangential relationship with the church made it a easier transition to dive into church as that kind
Mm.
of structure. And it wasn't until I started to get deeper into church, like I joined a ministry and I like interviewed to try to work there because I hated my job. Like I
Mm-hmm.
had applied at that point to like, and this is no exaggeration, over 600 jobs, both
Wow.
nationally and internationally. I was trying to be an au
Wait, that's
pair.
no exaggeration?
No exaggeration. This
600?
is when I was
How is
at,
that possible?
because I would be doing it while I was at work. I would go to work. I hated that fucking job, and I didn't really have like I'm very efficient. Once I know how to do what I have to do,
Yeah.
like it doesn't take me the whole day to do it. So like I would
Mm.
just be applying to any and everything that looked like it was gonna be okay. I applied to be an au pair internationally. Like
I think I
I
remember
was
this.
trying anything to get out of that
Which
bitch.
that would you might want to revisit that idea,
Well,
but
at this point, no.
no.
Like
Okay.
there, we'll talk about that a little bit later.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
anyway, like me getting deeper into the church helped me to actually like realize that like, oh, this church, as well as the network of churches that it belongs to, and most churches, if we're
Mm-hmm.
keeping it PG, if they're traditional, even if they go outside the tradition a little bit more, they're
Yeah.
younger, they're more this and that. At the end of the day,
Uh-huh.
it's a hierarchy. There's these social expectations that very much mimic what I would eventually go through after that in a work environment. And it really turned me off from church, but it didn't turn me off from the teachings of Christ and the
Mm-hmm.
things that I've absorbed that like actually like helped me to guide myself in life. And I found out after going through I think we touched on this before, a quick detour over into like new age spirituality and being heavy into and astrology, incorporating that and lessons learned from that into a
Mm-hmm.
more like well-rounded universal truths model of spirituality that I have, that's not necessarily connected to any like specific culture or group or teachings. Rather, it's an amalgamation of, it's like the Venn diagram of different spiritualities and religious teachings. The part
Mm-hmm.
where they all overlap is where I live, as opposed to
Mm-hmm.
being more or less attracted to one or more. Like I wouldn't call myself religious. There's not a religion that I practice, but I do consider myself to be a spiritual person.
Yeah. I think we also should let the audience know, like, when we say Christian, what do we mean? What was our, because there's different types of like denominations and things. Uh
Yeah, well, I
could you
mean,
describe?
we're Black Americans, so and then like the churches, the
There
first
are
church
like
that
black Catholics and things too.
that's true, but
It's
do
not
we get Catholic?
Catholicism. Well, well, it's not Jehovah's Witness. There's a lot of black Jehovah's Witnesses, and they
Yeah,
consider
I would
themselves
say we were
Christian.
like Baptist if it was going to be a
Baptist,
denomination. But then
not
once we
really
went to,
Pentecostal, but we would visit
oh
some
yeah, that's
Pentecostal churches. I feel like I've visited some before.
you visited some clowns, but like us as a family, our first
Oh,
church, which this is a very common name, Antioch.
oh yeah, 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 yeah.
That
They're
was a
Baptist.
Baptist church, and
ABC.
then I don't know what you would consider Living Faith. I think Living Faith was it didn't have Baptist in the name, but I feel
No,
like
but
it was
I think it was
closer.
Reformed Baptist. I don't know, because I know the church you're talking about later, when you were living with us,
Uh
would be more
huh.
like a Reformed Christianity. What they say, I think it
They
was
were. I think it was non-denominational. Is what they
it
said on the
was,
surface, but
but they really leaned a lot. And again, as you guys are going to hear, I know a lot about this Christianity shit. They leaned a lot on the Reformation. Basically, they
mm-hmm.
referenced I can't think of the guy's name, but like maybe it was Luther, something Luther or Luther something.
Martin Luther.
Um, might be him. He was like a Reformationist, where it was like basically Christian, but they were real heavy on theology and knowing the word of God, like big on the word and not all this like, but the songs, they would be, you wouldn't have a lot of shouting and all of that in the worship. The worship was a lot more internal, collectively, but internal kind of
Yeah,
thing. Yeah.
yeah.
But
So
yeah, I
yeah,
just
I
wanted
think
to
that was that. Yeah, it's yeah. I'm throwing it to you now anyway, because no, I
uh
think that does kind of explain like the last church that I was a part of that you were also a part of before a
mhm.
part of before moving to Atlanta. But that ends my formal Christian journey, and again, we'll dive
Mhm.
into some other things a little bit later. But I wanna throw it to you. Yeah, 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 yeah,
Okay. So um gosh, where to start? So okay, so yes, similarly to you, we grew up around in the same churches, and we would just pretty much go whenever our mom went. When I think what I realized that I wanted a personal relationship with God. I don't even remember me asking for like a Bible for Christmas one time as like
yeah.
a teenager. It was it's so whack. But but I remember distinctly asking that, and a lot of adults kind of like being like, "Wow, like what kind of kid wants that?" or whatever.
Right.
I just felt really, really drawn to wanting to understand God, and that was the only source that I knew of at the time. And I wanted it to be personal. I didn't want it to be a communal thing yet. You know what I mean? So I
Mm.
remember doing that sometime in high school, maybe middle school. I can't remember. And just overall, like doing a lot of like worship dance stuff, because if people who may be listening for the first time, that is my career. I'm a dancer, choreographer, dance instructor. And so my entry a little bit to dance, and even in secular realms, like just going to like a summer camp or something like that, like what was it, All City, where we would
Yeah.
dance, yeah, on the weekend. Just the way black folks are, like churchy, like doing things to God is just what we do, whether we go to church all the time or not. You gonna learn how to praise dance, or you gonna like the choir, like singing, like this is part. I feel like it's just in us to be connected like
Culturally
that,
Christian.
culturally Christian, right? And so doing praise dances and going to churches and doing little praise dances, that was just something I was doing or whatever. Um and then eventually I was in like I was in a hip hop crew for a while, which I loved. And I ended up leaving that crew because I found like this theater company that was, they needed like a choreographer, and it was Christian based. And I also had fell in love with somebody or whatever. And so all three of those things, like, I'm getting a dance. They were paying, it wasn't a lot, but they were paying. I had just started working at a dance studio that gave me a little bit more, stable money. So that you said was a little bit of extra money doing something I loved a lot, and it's God related. And then I had a little boo thing. So it was like, oh, this is like life is lining up for us, sis, Mm-hmm. And honestly, it was actually really, really nice, like for a good maybe 2 years. And I think even before that, I was in some kind of like gospel choir thing where it was because they needed a choreographer. They wanted to be more like, dance heavy, Kirk Franklin,
I was about to say, give me start.
Mm-hmm. So they enlisted a lot of dancers on their choir. I don't even know if we all could sing, but they had enough good singers that it worked. But yeah, so I was in that vibe. And then even with the theater company, we were developing original work, like original scripts. I mean, and I ain't gonna hold you, like, there's 2 of them that I was heavily involved in that to this day, I'm like, them jokers fire. I really wish things didn't work out the way they worked out, because we could have toured with those jokers. Like, they were fire. I'm now seeing how I'm taking that skill set into what I'm doing now, and it all works out. But I feel like I'm rambling a little bit, but then something kind of imploded with that theater group, and there was some personality types that weren't the best. We were, a lot of accusations going on, coming my way, our way, even with at that time, we were newlyweds. Yeah, and so we weren't really going to a church heavy at the time. We were really just in this group, which some people might hear, it lends itself to some cultish tendencies. Not calling it that, just the tendencies, because this group, it was very isolated group. Like, it was and there was a lot of like, kind of this energy of like, we're doing the work of God the right way, kind of, and over there, they're to this, and over, and we weren't associated with any other church that could hold accountability. That's a biggie for me now. I'm huge on accountability, checks and balances. We are seeing in our government how important that is. Okay?
Wow.
Every organization, the bigger it is, the more accountability, checks and balances. No one should be able to just fire off and do what they want. Y'all see y'all see how that works out. So the bigger it is, the structure, the more important. But it's even important in small structure. When you're small, you need to still have somewhere that someone can go to be like, hey, this is happening here. Can we see about it, a neutral party or whatever like that? So and that's when I started to open my eyes to that kind of thing. And so I'm like, okay, let's join an actual church now. Let's just, let's see if this works out better. And it was fine for a while. I guess there were some friendships that we made, other couples and things. And then once we were pregnant, like, being attached to other families was, that's huge when you have other parents around. Yeah. So I felt like I was getting anchored a bit in those situations, because that was what we needed at the time. And yeah, so I'll just say that. And then even once we moved to Atlanta, we joined a church that was associated with the church we were in at Philly. So it was like an easy transition. What ended up happening once the separation came, and the divorce and all, and I'm like, reaching out to pastors and things like that, even like even prior to that, because we, as you know, we were separated before being pregnant. We were separated for like, was that even a whole year? It was maybe like 6 months, 7 months, something like that. Yeah. And that was devastating too. It was just like, because again, it came out of nowhere. I was like completely blindsided. And during that time, and a little bit after, once we reconnected, there was the dad of one of the couples that we were kind of like, we would have like these couples meetings every month or something like that. one of the couple's dad, the girl's dad, was like a therapist as well, and great guy. Almost felt like a surrogate dad for me at the time. But I will say in hindsight, and he would even say this too, like, you know, it was very, he would pull out the Bible, and I'm like, it wasn't that he didn't advertise himself as a Christian therapist, right? I mean, he did work a lot with people in the church, but he would work with people that weren't necessarily religious either. So, but with us, because he also knew us so well and knew we were Christian and stuff like that, like he would pull out the Bible a lot during therapy, and I would be like, it just felt like a burden. It just felt like here I go being blindsided, but somehow it's my responsibility to like keep it together and like be in the word all the time and like be so upstanding and shit like that. And I'm just like, well, how much of his shit are we dealing with really? Like, how much responsibility are we giving him in this situation? And so yeah, but at the time I just took it as like, you know, you're right. You know, you get a lot of these messages, particularly women in church, that we're the ones that have to be strong. You know what I mean? And that like we gotta give all this grace to these niggas. And
we can't tempt them. We gotta police ourselves because Lord knows they can't, but at the same time they're supposed to lead us. But
yeah,
I digress.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, like he did, at least whenever it was like the both of us in the session together, you know, I would hear things like, you know, him being, you got to be the head of the house and da-da-da. So there was he would come at him with some stuff, but even then I was just like, I don't think that's what he needs to hear. Like, you know what I mean? Like we gotta, and I don't know what they were talking about when I wasn't there, but I'm like, I really hope that he's getting to some of these insecurities, some of these childhood traumas, because he had a lot of them. He has a lot of them to this day. I'm just like, I was in the back of my mind, just like, are we really processing here? You know, and even for me, like I would bring up stuff that, because I was always pretty self-aware of my like quote unquote daddy issues or whatever. And we would bring him up sometimes, but it would always be like, you know, well, you're an adult. You're an adult. You just, you know, it would be a lot of that, like, you know, get into your word. It was always like, get back into the word. I'm like, it just felt like a weapon rather than
like spiritual bypassing, basically. Like, okay, so don't worry about resolving the actual issue. You can be free of it if you just dive more into leaning not on your own understanding, but leaning
that
on the
kind of
word
thing. Yes. So, and again, I do appreciate him. He was definitely someone I could always call just to cry or yell or scream. Like eventually, when we moved down here, and when things blew up, you know, for the final time, like he was somebody I could just call, you know, at first. But it still would be some of that pushback even then. So, and I sensed that eventually, and I kind of stopped reaching out because I was like, I just don't want to get told that like it's my responsibility to solve his problems. Like I need help here. Like I need to figure this out. I'm tired of crying every fucking night. You know what I mean? So eventually, yeah. So the second time and final time we split. So now I'm hundreds of miles away from my family and friends of origin. I have a 2-year-old son. I also lost my job that was really great. Also probably run by a particular personality type as well. I find this to happen. You know what I'm realizing? We'll get to it, but I am finding that I think these things follow me because I'm that bitch, though. Because I keep going places and showing off unintentionally, just doing me. And kids be gravitating to, because that's the thing, I work with youth, and youth will always show you who you can trust, who has a good spirit. Youth and animals.
Yep.
This is why I love my boo, because he told us this. Okay. Anyway,
boo Michael Jackson, you guys.
Anyway, yeah. But I mean, but that's also why I, you know, don't agree with certain thoughts about him, because I'm like, no, the kids showed us who he is. The kids showed us. The animals he always had showed us. But I digress. Anyway, so yeah, so then I lost my job, and then like was it maybe 6 months to a year later, might have been less, I think it was less than a year really, lost my car. The car, something happened with the radiator. It would have cost too much to even fix. It would have been like more than it's worth to fix it or something like that. And so I'm over here jobless, carless, because I was using the car at that time for some kind of income. He was helping me a little bit with rent or whatever, because his name was on the lease, because he had went and signed the lease with me thinking we were going to move somewhere else, and then did what he did. And so he only helped out while his name was on the lease. And then once that was over, even slightly beforehand, he stopped helping me. So then I had to get some roommates and stuff like that. And so I'm just kind of like working all these odd jobs that's not really paying that consistently. And then, but I immediately started reaching out to my community and like the dance community especially. And I was noticing like, oh, it's the dance community really holding me up here, not the church. Mm-hmm. Not the church. Now I did eventually run it. There was a couple who that we hung out with in New York. I did meet them through church, and they ended up being a big rock as well. But eventually they also were like, what is this Christianity thing is trash. And I was like, I knew it was something about you that was different. And they've since kind of,
you've mentioned Caitlin before, so you could say her name.
Oh, have I? Oh yeah, line artist.
Yes,
that's my boo. Yeah, that's my boo. And she's now a mommy of two. It's such a journey for her too, so I'm so happy. But yeah, they eventually have come around to like, yeah, this traditional Christian institutionalized thing might not really be where it's at, but they still love Jesus. They still are like, they still live a life that these Christians claim that they're about. Mm-hmm. And so they were people I relied on heavily. They helped watch Noah a lot. Just really helping. And so I was really starting to realize like, so I feel like, and I think I had discovered this podcast. I don't listen to him as much now. This guy named Darren Hufford, and I actually found him while we were still in Philly. Darren Hufford has a podcast, or had a podcast, called Church in the Wild or something like that. And even back then, before we moved here, I was starting to investigate and entertain this idea of like, maybe real church really isn't in a building. It's like, it's out there. It's out doing the things. It's touching folks. It's holding there. It's actually doing stuff, putting your feet and your hands to the plow type thing. And so I was starting to come back around to that idea. And trying to make a long story short, I'm currently at a place that actually was like the founder is very, very Christian, but this institution that they developed is just literally what I feel like I've been being prepared for. You know what I mean? Like the social justice, the community outreach, and the love and respect of the art of dance and how it can impact youth, and help them develop, not just be technical dancers or artists or entertainers, but how it can actually be a tool for emotional regulation and maybe helping to subside some of these personality types early on. Yeah. That is now my personal goal. To be absolutely honest. Like, how can I use this gift of dance to eradicate as much as possible that type of bullshit, because it destroys people and a lot of people aren't aware of it and it's insidious. But yeah, so right now my journey with that, well, okay, so pretty much maybe like around the pandemic, I want to say, is when I started to explore more metaphysical spirituality. I got into some tarot. I think you really got me into the tarot. Like, you were doing it first, and then a friend of mine got me my own set of tarot cards, which they say is how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to be gifted your first set. You're not supposed to buy your own. So if you really into it and you haven't had, I know, it's just, it's just a thing. But if you really want something, maybe like, getting somebody ear about it so they can gift it to you. But she did give me my first one, and I mean, I was pulling several times a day. Like, I would wake up and pull and write it down. Okay. Cause it was, I would be on my lunch break pulling cards, I would be, and then I would get home that night, pull some more for the night. I just was like, so it was like I was deconstructing my Christianity. And it's weird because I don't think I entered Christianity on a low or on a like I'm desperate and clinging to things. And I actually think that I naturally gravitated to it. Now that I'm
Mm-hmm.
talking it through, the metaphysical stuff though, that was where I was like, and you, I don't know if you want to bring up your quote after this, but when I was at a very low place, I was like kind of overdoing the
Yeah.
metaphysical spiritual stuff. But you have a quote, or not a quote per se, but there's a podcast that you said the guy had said something similar to this.
Absolutely, yeah. So, that's actually a perfect segue because you naturally touched on what I was alluding to before I threw it to you. Even going through some of the hardest times in your life, and even in my life, after deconstructing for Christianity, we found that instead of running back to the church, it encouraged
Mm-hmm.
us to lean further into our own power. And it did take a detour into New Age spirituality for us to connect that anyone, no matter what
Mm-hmm.
side you fall on, that gravitates to any kind of organized religion or spirituality or leans too much on these systems is externalizing their power rather than understanding the connections, their own intrinsic connection to source, and that
Mm-hmm.
we don't need a third party to intercede or create boundaries
Mm-hmm.
to connect to our higher selves, but rather the more we seek the truth within ourselves, the more we understand that our journeys are like wholly individual, even though we may share some overlapping things with other people. At the end of the day, our connection to source is individual.
Mm-hmm.
And then I saw a video recently, and actually I sent it to you on IG. I don't know if you saw it. Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I sent it to you on IG. Where this comedian, he was talking to Rainn Wilson, and he was making a
Oh,
joke,
I
and he was,
recognize him. Mm-hmm.
yeah. And I should have got his name, but I'll leave the link to the video in the description. But he was using humor, but
Mm-hmm.
also making a very valid point. He was like, you ever notice that like how your life is going, like your current socioeconomic situation often dictates what kind of spirituality you lean into. So,
Yeah.
those that are comfortable, they have all of their material needs met. They often go for religions like Buddhism or New Age Buddhism and New Age spirituality because they're able to enjoy their time on earth and focus on the present. A lot of that mindfulness, that goop culture,
Mm.
um, where it's like a bastardized or sanitized, I should say, version of like Buddhism and Hinduism and like a mishmash of those things because it focuses on being present because your present life is great. But on the
Mm.
flip side, when things are seeming out of your control and
Right.
you are in a low place and you're seeking guidance, you're going to often graduate towards structure and rules that give you
Yeah.
something to look forward to, an afterlife, a reward for
Right.
enduring the pain of this
Meaning,
life.
like this has to make sense. It's
This
some.
has to
It's
make
things that
it,
are so bad. Make it make sense.
right. You have to derive some kind of significance in your suffering, and it's
Yeah.
often wrapped around this idea of martyrdom and a
Mm-hmm.
ultimate reward after life. But I've
Right.
said this before: those who created their heaven on earth convince us that our heaven is in the sky, because that keeps you um, the spiritual bypassing, where you'll lean into these rules and these things that feed off of what I call the big three: fear, shame, and guilt, to keep
Yeah.
you complacent in these systems, complicit in these systems, and waiting for some reward that's never going to come.
Yeah.
And I believe that everything is like in the middle, like
Mm.
how we were talking about. It's like, for me, I do believe that there's a universal force that binds all of us, that is bigger than us, but we're all intrinsically connected to, and
Mm-hmm.
within that there are some universal truths. So like, and actually we brought up the four agreements. To me, that is the
Mm-hmm.
most succinct and easiest outline, because it removes culture
Mm-hmm.
and cultural influence.
Right.
Basically, it removes external influence and it
Yeah.
focuses on how, if you integrate these kinds of activities into your daily lives, you can cultivate a personal freedom as well as better relationships, leading to a more fulfilling existence. And that's kind of
Yeah,
where I,
it makes the focus about the truths themselves and not like, well, you should follow this particular culture because they have these truths or whatever. It's like you kind of
right.
grabbed it. It could be true no matter where you are or what your background is and stuff. Yeah.
And it's all about self-governance, because how you create a personal freedom, like that's actually what my tattoo is. As above, so
Mm.
below. As without, as is with the soul, right? That's like part of the full quote. Because it's like your internal world will undoubtedly affect your external world, which affects your
Ooh!
internal world. It's a cycle that's interconnected.
And
So if you're not at peace
listen,
within yourself, you're going to create chaos around you because you're chaotic
that's
within.
we gonna circle back to that too.
Absolutely. Actually, we can start there
Lord.
and then go back to the four agreements to talk about
Yeah.
how you can combat those things by
Oh,
actually
there we
following
go.
the four
Look at how
agreements.
this is actually becoming more cohesive. This conversation. No, it's true because like I tell people like you gotta feel your body. You gotta know your body. You gotta know you gotta be able to sense what's going on around you because if things are always chaotic, there's always confusion, discord, um you just always questioning yourself like something is present emanating that because that's in them,
Yeah.
and it's usually somebody that's either the center, the nucleus in the middle of a thing and kind of can and, influence everybody, or they're at the top where they can influence that down below them something. But
Mm-hmm.
you gotta know yourself. You have to. That's why this, like what we're talking about as far as our spirituality journey, and realizing through all of these processes, like it comes back to inside us. I even feel like um oddly enough, I feel like it was the inside of me drawn to Christianity, like or to God rather. But it was first. It was I went through, like I said, I was like, I need a Bible because it's the only thing I knew at the time, right? But
Right.
as I got older, I really started realizing like whatever this power is that I was searching for that way, it's inside of me. Like I would, when we got stuck in Arizona.
Yeah. That's a story.
That is, we'll put a pin in that too, y'all. We got some things.
Our lore is kind of crazy. Like
It our lore, not our lore. Like literally, whenever when people do like two truths and a lie, and
uh-huh.
I'll always throw that when oh yeah, I was kidnapped in Arizona one summer, and everybody like, what the fuck is it? I met
And I'm like,
Beyonce,
clearly that's the lie.
but like I
Can't
met Beyonce, and I'm allergic to flowers, and it's like allergic to flowers is the lie, actually.
exactly.
A bitch did meet Beyonce. But our story is crazy. But yeah, the day before that miracle happened, I went outside that night and I worshiped God so hard. Like I said, you gotta get us out of here. And that happened the next day. So I'm like, again, I don't know, I don't know if I should associate that with God as the God I knew at that time or with just me. I really feel like it's both. I really feel like it was it's like, I just feel like there's this spiritual umbilical cord I have that when I cry out, he answers, period. Period.
Yeah.
Like I know that. I know that. And yeah, so like I have a power that's so intrinsically untouchable, and it's getting more and more powerful, and it is scaring people, and they trying me, but it's untouchable because I didn't make it.
Right.
I didn't manipulate it to be I don't even know where I don't know. I just be moving, and like that's scary to some people. So
Absolutely.
so when things fell apart again recently, I did find myself scrambling more with the metaphysical stuff because it was new to me. It wasn't something I'd really been into before. And so there was a period of time where I was very much lost. And I feel like I was more lost recently than I had ever been before. And in fact, where I think I am now is there's this like really nice merge of the two happening where
Mm-hmm.
I still have a homegirl do some readings for me, and she's so on point. Like, but I don't go to her all the time. I don't. It's just if I feel something a little shaky, I might be like, "Hey sis, let me, let's key real quick, and then let's pull them cards." But that's also my homegirl. Period. Like we hang out all the time, and she's into theater and all that kind of stuff. So we hang out even when I don't need or looking for that. I haven't even touched the cards I got in maybe like 2 years now or something like that.
Wow.
I haven't touched them at all. I do want to get another set though. Yeah, I still have like I sent Noah with some crystals and like a little necklace that
It's
are that I
good.
that have energy that I feel like he will need down there out of my presence. And I feel comforted with him having that. And he even asked like right before he left, he was like, "Did you put my necklace in the bag?" And I was like, "Oh my god, I was
You still
crying."
got that mojo bag.
You got it, but no! It was very much on that Anna energy, honey. So,
Yes.
but I love that he was like, he asked, he was like, he wanted to make sure it was in there. Like, so like, him and I have a weird kind of like, he my homeboy, but also like, that's my son. And like, I'm his mom. Like, and anyway, so I still like that. I do still believe in saging and smudging. Like those sorts of rituals are important because it is what I feel like ties the spiritual to the physical realm. You know what I mean? It's
Absolutely.
not that there's power in those things. The power is in is in what it does to your
Your
cells. Like,
intention.
yeah, it's like why we have weddings, it's why we have funerals, it's why we have graduation ceremonies. It's like why we do certain ceremonial things, even like that we're culturally accepting, but it's like the same shit, honestly. If I have
Absolutely.
a ritual when I move in somewhere, I want to smudge and clean, and that's the same thing. Like they even have the smoke stuff with the Catholics do that smoke thing, or
Yeah,
it's what I mean.
incense
It's
and
a
stuff.
similar
I'm
thing.
glad you brought that up because that's the biggest thing for me that I see a lot of the times, and I know you've seen it too, where like Christians attack spirituality because they're making the assumption that we're doing the same thing with our tools that they are doing with their tool, the Bible and God. They're assuming that
Mm.
we're ascribing some kind of power to these crystals. You're worshiping your crystals. No, I'm not. You don't know what like now. Some people they do go down that
Some
spiritual
people do.
pipeline, but most of us who have reached the kind of point where you and I are, where it's like this happy medium, it's like we still believe that there is a universal force, a power higher than ourselves that we are intrinsically connected to. And there are many different mediums that you can use, whichever way that resonates with you as an individual. And maybe
Mm-hmm.
one way and maybe multiple ways to get messages and clarity of spirit, whether it's calling out and being so like basically removing yourself from yourself, detaching from your
Mm.
ego and completely saying, I give this to you, spirit, you tell
Yes.
me what to do, type of
Yep.
thing. Or you have crystals, which are naturally occurring elements, which is another thing I'm gonna get
Don't
my
y'all
sisters on
ladies
this
want
evening.
y'all diamond rings, don't y'all?
But not even just that. I'm talking about like how when Christians they say, crystals are dead. It's unnatural what y'all do with crystals. How? But God created everything. So you're saying that something that
The
He created,
breastplate of
I know
righteousness
had
has.
rubies and emeralds and stuff like that. Which always reminds me of. So there's two books that I always recommend to people: The Alchemist and the Four Agreements that we're about to get into a little bit
Alchemist is
more.
good too. Yeah.
But yeah, even he had Turim and Umim, the white stone and the black stone
Yes.
that he kept with him. Oh, and but these are things that are natural elements that resonate, have its own energy and its own frequency.
That part.
And same thing with herbs, whether it's a smudging herb or something that you take internally or something that you smoke. You can
Mm,
drink the tea, you can smoke it, you can smudge your house with it, you can do da 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 da.
yeah.
And that thing itself doesn't have power, but what you're using it for, you're
The
manipulating its
intention.
metaphysical properties to
Yeah.
create and manifest externally the things that you've already connected to the divine to say like this is the energy that I want to be, and I'm creating that energy
Yeah.
by it. And you see it in all different kind of cultures. It manifests in different kind of ways. People think about feng shui,
Right.
and the bindi, the dot, called dividing
Yeah.
the third eye in Middle Eastern and Hindi cultures.
Right.
You see it in the evil eye when it comes to spirituality.
Mm.
It's called the evil eye, but it's actually not evil. It's more to ward off evil. It's not conjuring evil.
Mm.
And then again, you see it in the rituals in the Christian church. Why do you
Communion.
have communion? Exactly. Why do you have communion? Why do you eat of the body and drink of the blood? Because it's a way to physically connect yourself to a metaphysical force. You
Right. We're
do
not
these
here out here
things
being
with
cannibal.
intention.
It's a representation. You know what I mean? Like,
Exactly.
the
Exactly.
Ash Wednesday stuff and all that. Like all those little things. Like you and oh gosh, what was I going to say? Because I was thinking about communion. Oh, so this is kind of a shout out to, if you really want to get into the deconstruction of Christianity, I'm about to put y'all on Christian Smith, Christian with a K, and the Faith
Mm-hmm.
Community, which they're based here in Atlanta as well. I actually hope
Yeah.
to run into them type of way, but
I told you he's one of my mutuals on Instagram, so maybe I might
yes.
reach out to him.
Oh yeah, okay, yeah, yeah, and, or share this with him, and then he can kind of make some connections on, connect the dots. But
Right.
that's who you really want to I think it's just the faith community on like all the platforms and stuff like that. But I mean, they break it down, baby. And why did I bring him up? Oh, so there was a he has this segment where they like, it's called like reaching for the stars, where they're like these Christians doing this with dumb stuff, and he's like, y'all reaching, like it's so funny though. And a lot of times it'll be like little clips off of Instagram or TikTok or something like that. So there was one chick that was like, I guess she was kind of new to Christianity. She seemed like a babe in Christ, as they say. But she's like, I'm gonna go around my whole house with some grape juice or whatever. It's like supposed to be like the blood covering her house or whatever. And like they was just like, and then it's Welch's. You didn't even think to get wine or something. Like it
Right,
just it got
right.
Welch's. But like, so again, but she's all talking like that because she's calling it the blood of Christ and da da da. It's supposed to be acceptable. But if I go and say I'm about to protect my house and cover it with the spirit of the Lord, but I'm using a sage, how is
Or some
that
Palo
different?
Santo,
Or some
like
and I'm going around speaking to Jesus as I do it. How is that any different?
why is it that I have altar with some frankincense and myrrh on it? How is
And at
that
least
any
and at least
different
then my
than
house
Sweetheart?
smells good and the air is
Especially
actually
Palo
clean
Santo.
because sage really has cleansing powers and stuff like that. Or if you
Anti
go to Florida,
Yeah, antimicrobial powers. Like it literally cleanses
exactly.
and metaphysically cleanses.
Meanwhile, she going around putting juice around her house. That's not
Ants.
useful. She
Ants. Do
attracting
you want
ants.
ants? This is how
She's
you get
attracting.
ants.
There you go. Okay, so I'm doing two things. I'm doing two beneficial things. She ain't doing anything productive, really.
Right.
So
Yeah, I completely agree. So yeah, that's kind of where we are. And just to wrap up this conversation, I really did want to touch on the four agreements real quick.
Okay.
So again, the two books I recommend to everybody. If you're actually there's three books. If you're starting your spiritual journey, I
Mm-hmm.
recommend the Four Agreements by Don Miguel Ruiz or Ruiz Miguel.
Mm-hmm.
The Alchemist by Paulo Coelho,
Very good. That's a good book.
and The Power of Now by Eckhart
Eckhart
Tolle.
Tolle. Yeah, I haven't read that one yet.
Oh, bitch, you need
I
to.
listened to a lot of his interviews though. I know it doesn't necessarily count, but sometimes these interviews can be like almost like 2 hours long. You almost feel like
Right.
you heard the whole book sometimes. But
Right. Well, I have his book on Audible, so like I've listened to it, and he
oh yeah.
narrates it too. So it's like if you're used to listening
Ooh,
to his interviews and stuff like that, then
that might
you'll
be
be able to
good.
get into his audiobook. But yeah, those are my three biggest recommendations. No matter where you're coming from in spirituality, the reason why
Mm,
they hit so much is because they do like what we were talking about. They hit on universal truths. But the four
yeah.
agreements, I feel like that should be your first one because I
Simple
think it should
read too.
go the
Easy
Four
read.
Agreements and then the Alchemist and then the Power of Now because the Four
Yeah.
Agreements is like a great like introduction
Entry.
and
Yeah.
very easy for you to like grasp no matter where you're coming from in when it comes to your
Mm,
spiritual journey. And so the four agreements are be impeccable with your word. This agreement
mm,
emphasizes using your words with integrity and intention. It means speaking truthfully, avoiding gossip and negativity.
Mm-hmm.
Using your word to create rather than destroy is key.
Okay, get on, talk on that a little more.
I will. So
Eh,
actually,
oh yeah.
let me circle back really quickly. So
Okay.
what he means by agreements, his premise is, and it's like rooted in Toltec spiritual teachings, but it's not like it's not framed within their culture.
Mm-hmm.
Is free of that. So basically, his premise is that everything that we believe is an agreement that we've made. We
Mm.
agree that this thing is or isn't true, and that's why we believe it. And so you're saying if you replace all your like core, or if you use these four frameworks to help you like sort through your beliefs or your
Mm.
agreements, if you can agree to these things, it'll lead to a life that is more personally fulfilling,
Mm-hmm.
um, sorry, that's not the call I was waiting for. That'll be more personally fulfilling, as well as help your interpersonal relationships. So being
Mm.
impeccable with your word, yeah. So using your word to create rather than to destroy is such a key point,
Huge.
because a lot of our communication that has been normalized, especially in like a Western society,
Yeah.
is predicated on passivity implications, using your place in hierarchy and indirect language in to basically manipulate other people around you, as opposed to
Yeah.
being direct. And what that does
Yes.
is it actually feeds into the next couple of agreements, because when you're not impeccable with your word and you've become used to others not being impeccable with that word, you start to take things personally and make assumptions, because you don't have the clarity of understanding exactly what's going on. And so the second agreement
Mm.
is to do not take anything personally. What others say
Right.
and do is a projection of their own reality, not a reflection of you. Taking things personally creates unnecessary suffering and emotional turmoil.
Mm.
And on the same token, don't make assumptions. Assumptions lead to misunderstandings and conflict. Instead, communicate clearly, ask questions, and seek to understand. But because so many people don't do the first one, they
Mm-hmm.
end up also not doing the second and third, because there's a lot of assumptions that are made, implications, and like assuming that this is what's going to happen. And then even if you are somebody, so when they encounter somebody who is impeccable with their word, who speaks directly, and again, I get this a
Yeah.
lot as an autistic person who prefers to speak and say exactly what I mean, you'll get people mad at you because they're assuming things and taking it personally, when in
Mm-hmm.
reality they're not actually understanding what's going on.
Trickle
And
down
that
effect.
leads, it's a trickle down effect. So I love how the first three are also connected, but the fourth agreement is to always do your best. This agreement
Mm-hmm.
acknowledges that your quote unquote best varies depending on circumstance. It
Mm.
encourages effort and dedication while accepting that perfection is not always attainable. So if you
Yeah.
keep that in mind, if your goal is to always do your best, and you try to be as impeccable with your word as possible, try to avoid taking things personally and making assumptions, that is going to lead to this personal freedom of not
Absolutely.
being like going into every social situation walking on eggshells, and
Yes.
understanding that someone else's misunderstanding, if they don't vocalize that to you, you can't worry about it, because if they don't understand you
Mm.
and they're choosing to make assumptions or be offended by something, you have no way to make it right and do your
Yeah.
best in that regard. But you could sleep at night knowing that, hey, I went in here saying exactly what I meant. I didn't have any kind of like hidden intention behind it, and whether that
Mm-hmm.
person understood that or not is outside of my control.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, actually, if that could be a segue right into my what I hate thing. If we want to do that,
Okay,
because
yeah,
I got
absolutely, we
about
can do that.
30 minutes before I have to head out. But
That is a
I,
perfect segue. So
yeah, and
yeah,
I'm gonna keep it short. And honestly, we can kind of stay on this subject because essentially, this is what we're gonna use to explain why I feel.
absolutely. So yes, that was Watch Your Dancer, and now we are seamlessly transferring into hating and loving. So big sis, what is it that you hate?
Yes. Now, y'all know if you've been listening to the last 2 episodes, we normally do it like, what do we hate to love or what do we love to hate, right? So we're going to make it a little more, I guess, because yours isn't a you hate to love it thing.
Yeah, I just love it.
You just love it. But mine is a I hate. I also love hating it though. Honestly, I do get a lot of joy out of the hatred I have for this thing.
Oh wow, okay.
And it deserves every ounce of my hate, as it should everyone.
Especially for what you've been through, yes.
My God. It's like I said, it follows me. So I hate, like biggest hater, hate the way it walk, hate the way it talk, hate the way it dress.
Flames on the side of my face. Seasoning.
Classic. Y'all, if y'all don't know Clue, get into that movie. Y'all, it's so good. I might go find that because that's a good ass movie.
Hell yeah, it's on one of these streaming services.
Yeah, it gotta be. But I have such a deep disdain for narcissism of any kind. I don't care if it's straight up NPD full blown or just narcissistic tendencies. I know for sure that in our American Western society, it's built off narcissism. I mean, period. Like, just even if you think about like even slavery and how much like cognitive dissonance they had to have in order to structure a whole country off that shit is wild. Right. And have continued to do it. And they are gaslighting the fuck out of us. Like, ever since we've been free, the gaslighting has been insane. And we're seeing like how they will literally try to get rid of history and like change complete narratives in front of your face. It's crazy. So it's very clear that it's insidious, and it is like in our society, it is very much ingrained. And unfortunately, there are some innocent people that have lived their life by it unknowingly. You know, what they might say or think they don't, but they really do. Like when push comes to shove, sometimes they'll say things like, well, that's just how it is. Type shit. You know what I'm saying? Even though you might know them and know that they don't really want it to be that way, but they haven't had enough misfortune from it to want to change it. Right. And so it's just like, oh, it's just how it gets the game you got to play. It's like, what you mean? I'm here to be a change maker. Again, this is probably another reason why I'm a problem for people. Because I'm not it's the way it is. It's going to be the way I want it to be. And it ain't going to be that. Where I am, we ain't doing that. So yeah, so to your 4 agreements, I really feel like that not only are those great just spiritual practices kind of as a whole, but I feel like if you really follow those things and you take note to who isn't, like that is the stuff that can get rid of narcissism, at least in your direct sphere.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Because they bank on that. They first bank on, well, first of all, they're not impeccable with their word. If you have narcissistic tendencies, that's the first and most common thing about you. No impeccability. You will lie, you will gossip, you will try to paint pictures of people a certain way to other people. All that, the words is how they really do their thing, right? And they say all kinds of stuff, and there's literally people are just like so relaxed that they don't think to try to hold them accountable to anything or think to like protect themselves and try to like keep track of shit. You ain't living your life like that. You know, no one wants to be paranoid, you know?
Right.
And so they bank on that. It's exhausting. We got enough things going on. So they bank on that. They bank on that. They use the power of not having impeccable words to then all of a sudden you're hearing things and there's these assumptions that people start to make. So if you don't practice these things, you will get these words in your head and make assumptions and then make it personal. So like let's say they talking about somebody, they say, oh, you know that person, and now you made this assumption because you haven't experienced that with that person. You didn't talk to that person. You just hearing it and thinking like, okay, maybe you even respect this person that's talking to you to some degree, and you think they wouldn't lie to you. So now you made the assumption, and then about that person, then somehow that becomes, oh, you know, they feel a certain way about you, and it's personal now. Now you're like, not only do I assume this thing about the person that someone told me, now I'm assuming that thing also is against me somehow. Blah, 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 blah. You know, so it's just, I mean, the 4 agreements is essential. It would nip a lot of narcissism in the bud, and we need to kill it at the root. at the root.
Absolutely. Because
Yeah.
yes, the disclaimer is like when we talk about narcissism, we're not actually talking about NPD. We're more so talking about the narcissistic tendencies that have become normalized in our culture because those who created the framework from it were narcissists.
Yes, yes,
So it's
very
kind
much.
of like it's a lot of people are they're making, so they're not doing their best because they're making conscious decisions to do things, but the motivation
There
behind
you
it is
go.
subconscious because it's just like that's just how it is type shit.
Right, right. They think that that's yeah. And a lot, and that's the thing is a lot of times they end up getting rewarded. It ends up
Mm-hmm.
working for them because most people are not aware of how insidious it is, and so they end
Yeah,
up being rewarded, and so the cycle continues. You know,
and they feel threatened when somebody bucks that system
challenges
because it's
that.
like
Yeah,
yeah, it's like
yeah.
excuse
And they have
me, play
intrinsic
the
power.
game. Yeah,
What?
exactly. Like I don't need you to validate who I am. I don't need to play this game to feel like I'm worthy. And that
Yeah.
really is a
It
threat.
confuses them. It confuses them first, and then they feel threatened.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
that cognitive dissonance. They usually dig their heels in instead of like facing and
Mm-hmm.
moving
And
forward.
that is what Black Americans have been. If we're honest, we're confusing them because we were oppressed. We oppressed you. We did all these things, and you became a president. We have multi-billionaires of you.
Mm-hmm.
Our best export, hip hop, is yours.
Mm-hmm.
Come on,
The only like
confusing.
true American food cuisine that's worth anything is
That's
soul food.
original. That's
That's
origin. That's
original
origin
to
is
us.
here.
Yes, is soul
There you
food.
go. Soul food, baby. Come on, like when and again, that's not saying that there aren't individuals within Black American culture that don't subscribe to it. It's very possible those billionaires do because I would think it's
Mm-hmm.
very hard to be a billionaire completely ethically. One,
Yeah, you can't.
um,
There's no such thing as an ethical
it's no
billionaire. As
way.
much as I love Rihanna and Beyonce, they shouldn't have that much money.
It's there. So you would hope that somehow they're really dispersing it some kind of way, and maybe their assets equal that or something. I don't know, but either way, it's like our people as a whole. It's just the power is so intrinsic that you cannot stop us, and they hate us for it.
Right. Yeah, because like, yeah, I'm not even gonna double down on that. You hit the nail on the head.
Mhm.
Um, so yes, I agree, no notes. So to wrap it up, I have
On a lighter
a
note.
yes, I have a straight up love, and as you can see, I'm already like glowing thinking
Hmm.
about it. I love to info dump about my special interests, and my two
Yeah.
biggest special interests are traveling and languages. And this is something, and they often
Mm.
actually go hand in hand. But the way I differentiate like a special interest from like a hyperfixation, because I have ADHD as well as autism, and with ADHD, hyperfixations are very common where it's like, oh, I have a new
Mm.
interest. I'm getting a lot of dopamine from it. And so I dive right into it and then I forget about it or I kind of abandon it once the dopamine runs out.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas my special interest is dopamine like itself for me. It's like I literally never get tired of talking about it, thinking about it, planning it, learning about it. For
Mm.
my whole life, I've always wanted to travel and I've always been interested in other languages, like since I was a little girl. I remember in
Mm.
first grade, the I said I want to go to the University of Athens in Greece.
What?
Because yeah,
You
I remember
said that?
in first grade, I was like, I want to go to the
Wow.
University of Athens because I just like I had for some reason I had
Wow.
just learned about like the Greek gods or something like that, or heard some maybe Hercules came out around that time. I don't know, but I was
Mm.
like, this is so cool.
Hercules.
And then when I finally got there, it was actually crazy. I was in the cab from the airport to my hotel and I cried when I saw the
Wow.
Acropolis because like my inner child was just like
Yeah, I can only
I couldn't help it.
imagine.
I was like, wow, I'm like actually here. There's a fucking Acropolis. Like, what? Are you serious? Type shit.
That's crazy.
Um But yeah, like you'll never be able to really get me to shut up about traveling and my love of languages. So I
Mm.
speak Spanish at a very highly conversational level.
Yes, you do.
Um, I've been to Spain twice and never had
Hmm.
any issues being able to communicate and get around. And for my birthday next week, I'm going to Mexico and Guatemala for the first
Hey.
time. And it'll just be really cool to have, 10 days of being in the thick of it and like being able to use
Hmm.
my Spanish skills every day. Like I love that shit.
Yes.
And then authentic Mexican food, authentic Guatemalan food, not
They
anything
speak
that's
Spanish in
like
Guatemala? It's
yeah.
Spanish? Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. Yeah,
Uh-huh.
this is, as y'all can see, I do not. This is so I gotta ask her all the questions.
Yeah, in Guatemala they speak Espanol.
What's the
Um
food like there? Like, how do you
I
do you
don't know
know?
much about it. And you know what?
Okay,
I didn't do any research because I want
okay,
to
so you'd
be
be
pleasantly
surprised.
surprised. Exactly. Because
Okay,
one of the things I am grateful for as an autistic person, I don't have ARFID, which is it's like a restrictive food intake.
yeah, yeah,
I don't have that. Now I have like my comfort foods or like go to foods, or like I'll get hyper fixations with certain meals.
right,
Like for
same.
a while I was making Brussels sprouts with pancetta and goat cheese and shallots for like 2 weeks straight. That shit is
Okay, I'm
delicious.
gonna have to try that.
It's
You
delicious.
made that up?
Yeah, I just was and some balsamic glaze. So I just went. I was at Trader Joe's. I was like, let me get this bag of Brussels sprouts. I already had olive oil and balsamic glaze. I got some goat cheese, some pancetta, and a shallot, and I threw
Amen.
it all in the pan. And then topped it off with the balsamic glaze. That shit is delicious.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, I might have to get
That's how
back
you my
on.
lettuce wraps that I made y'all.
Uh
That's
huh. Uh huh.
I just know how to whip it up now. I even like, oh, you don't got this, I can figure it out. It's just what I know how to make
Exactly,
now.
exactly. Because I was using bacon until I got the pancetta, like just a little whatever,
Mm-hmm.
whatever. But anyway, I digress. But no, I didn't look up the cuisine for Guatemala because I kind of just want to go and be pleasantly surprised. And there's some
Nice.
like Mexican dishes that like, obviously the ones I know I like from having like authentic enough food visiting, places when I've been in LA, and even some places around here that have like authentic Mexican food. But like it'll just be something different to have it in Mexico with their
Yes.
actual like fresh produce
Mm-hmm.
so yeah, I'm really really looking forward to that. And yeah, I didn't get a chance to go anywhere all last year. The last time I traveled was February of 2023, and
Ooh, it's
I
been that. Oh, that's a long time for you.
yes, because I mean, what was it? September 2023. I was supposed to go to Morocco, but then they had that earthquake in Marrakesh where I was supposed to go, so then I canceled it. But
Mm.
because of that, I had the credit still with that travel company, and that's what I used to book the trip I'm going on next week. So everything works
Nice.
out. But yeah, I'm so excited. And then I wanted to touch on a few tips because I remember you asked me
Yes.
about this, and this is something I could talk about. So a lot of times I travel solo, and people get so like, "Oh my god, you actually like go to these places by yourself? You weren't scared? You weren't this and the other?"
Mm.
And no, I've literally never been scared to go anywhere by myself. Like I've been to Spain twice, France, the UK, Italy, Greece, and Morocco for a day trip
Okay,
um,
yeah.
by
Hmm.
myself so far. And now I'm about to add Mexico and Guatemala to that list. And for me, that has been the best trips I've taken. I've done also three other trips, but they were with people.
Yeah.
And I would say one of them, the one where I went to Hawaii with Daddy and CJ, that wasn't a problem. Like I feel like we're very similar in that when it was time to, be back at the Airbnb, we didn't need constant conversation. We knew
Right.
we just wanted to be in our own worlds on our phones or going to sleep and doing what we needed to do. And then while we were out, we were doing activities. That was fine. But the other two trips that I went on, one to Vegas and one to Miami, were like girls' trips. And
Mm.
they were also before I knew that I was autistic. So I didn't know how to
Okay.
navigate when I would like hit a certain social wall. And I would like push
Mm.
myself, and like sometimes I would come back from a trip not even really feeling like I had a chance to relax.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
So
Understood.
once I started traveling solo, I started to figure out like, ooh, there are ways that I can like still feel comfortable while stepping outside of my comfort zone. And the biggest while
Mm-hmm.
stepping outside of my comfort zone. And the biggest tips that I have for if you are somebody who really wants to travel but you're nervous about traveling with people, or you can be like me. The first time I went by myself was because ain't nobody have the money to go with me or the time. So like it was kind of situational. But from that, I was like, I actually like this better. So
Mm.
what it does is it gives me the freedom to do whatever I want whenever I want without feeling pressured to like join in on a certain group activities or like do things when I just really
Mm.
need to recharge. Like I think I told you first my first international trip I went to Spain for a week and then Paris for 3 days. I was go 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 every day when I was in
Mm.
Spain, 4 days in Madrid, 3 days in Barcelona. I didn't take a single day to just like not do anything. So by
Mm.
the time I got to France, my first night out, I went and got dinner with my friend Francine, who lives there.
Mm-hmm.
But the second day, I didn't do shit. I went to the grocery store that was down the street from my hotel, got some
Mm-hmm.
charcuterie and some wine, and I sat out on the balcony of because my room had a balcony. I sat out on the balcony with
That
my
sounds
laptop,
great.
watching Netflix,
Honestly,
drinking
sometimes
wine,
that's
and
all
eating
you
charcuterie.
need is just to have the surroundings, like doing what you would just normally do, but just like
Uh
you in a
huh.
different place, you know? Yeah.
Exactly. And I just needed to just like that was so recharging for me that the next day, I went and I walked the freaking Champs Elysees. I walked from the Arc de Triomphe all the way to the Eiffel Tower after doing
Mm.
a little shopping on the Champs Elysees. Like, cause I
Yeah.
gave myself that time to recharge. And then later that night, I went out with Francine and her fiance. We went to dinner. We got on the
Mm-hmm.
metro. I actually rode the metro in Paris and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And I had the energy to be able to do that because I gave myself the space to just
Mm-hmm.
have time to be by
Just be
myself.
you.
Yeah, and also having my own hotel room and not sharing that space with anybody else. At the end of the day, even when I do have an activity packed day, I get to come back and be by myself, which is how I charge. I don't get recharged being around people unless
Mm-hmm.
I'm doing something that is a special interest, which leads me to tip number two is that when you do decide on activities that you're going to do,
Mm-hmm.
it's best to book group activities to meet others without the stress of planning logistics, but also it holds the added benefit of being something that you already love to do, and you start off already having something in common with these people. Y'all all
Right.
decided to do this
Mm-hmm.
chore or this activity, so that's already a common ground. And then if
Yeah.
they're super into it, like you're super into it, you have stuff to talk about the whole time that you're doing it. And then there's times where if it's a guided tour, there is no real talking. You're just listening
You're
to the person
listening.
info dump
Mm-hmm.
to you. And I'm somebody who loves when people info dump to me when they're really like excited about something. So to me,
Mm.
that helps me because short term interactions with strangers is really easy for me as an
Oh, that
autistic
is
person because
okay.
I don't yeah no it is because like especially if I'm already doing something that I genuinely intrinsically have an interest in talking about. I could do small talk
Mm.
about going to the Vatican, which I
True.
did, because it's like okay, half the time we're listening to Marco, our guide, but the other half of the time we're off exploring, taking our own pictures or chatting about what we just learned, to saying, oh, did you see this over here, da 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 da. And that kind of small talk is always going to be something that I'm into, as opposed to, every day somebody trying to talk to you about what somebody else said and this, that, and the other, like
Yeah.
a lot of that shit. So yeah, for me, I found that as an autistic person, I felt safe because I also do a lot of research ahead of time. I plan things
Mm.
out. I plan out my logistics, where I'm going to stay, how I'm going to get there before I
Right.
go, so that I don't feel out of sorts. And then I usually make an itinerary, and I try to stick to that itinerary, but I also listen to myself. Like if I get up that day and I'm like, actually, I'm not beat for another full day of walking tours or something like that, then I don't have anybody else being like, well, we gotta go because we already planned it. I can just make the decision to stay my ass in my hotel room or go get a massage or go do something like that.
Mm-hmm.
without the guilt. So yeah, and then again, languages. I love languages. I speak Spanish. I'm learning Portuguese. I know some phrases in Japanese. I know how to say hello, please, thank you. Do you speak English in like 10 languages? So I like the fact that when you learn other languages, it helps you to learn other cultures, and
Yeah.
people really appreciate, even if you don't know a lot, just taking a little bit of time to be
Mm-hmm.
considerate and learn how to say something in their language. They're more than likely to want to help you,
Yeah.
and not be so like, oh, here goes this arrogant American coming in and thinking that we all got to speak English. A lot of these people do speak English,
Mm-hmm.
or they know somebody who speaks English, and it's enough for them to try to like communicate with you. But if you start
Mm-hmm.
off trying to speak their language, I've gotten a lot of great reception
Yeah.
that way too. So yeah,
That's
that's what I love. I love
mm.
to info dump about my special interests, traveling, and
Yeah.
languages. And I'm so excited I
Yeah.
get to put that shit to the test next week, baby.
Would you say the neurodivergent thing is a special interest though? I mean, I feel like you could talk about that all day too. You
Yeah,
quite
well, I
frankly have
don't.
a no,
It's not
yeah.
necessarily a special interest as much as it like literally shapes everything about me. Like, I hate
Mm.
when people are like, "Oh, well, all you talk about is autism." Like, cause not me necessarily. Like, yeah, I started out with that. Like, that's how I built my platform. Mostly talking about my healing journey that involved a lot of
Mm-hmm.
realizations and recognition of like differences in communication and
Mm.
motivation between specifically autistic and ADHDers and autistic
Yeah.
people, in particular neurotypicals. But as I've become more comfortable with that fact and also understand how it fully affects me, I've
Mm-hmm.
transitioned into just talking about the things that I genuinely love through the lens of understanding that I'm autistic, like how I just did now. Like I could talk about travel from my unique perspective as a solo traveler, an autistic
Mm-hmm.
traveler, and somebody who has the ability to interact with a lot of with people, but also needs to have that flexibility to be by myself. Because if I don't, I'm gonna come back from a trip feeling like I did work as opposed to enjoying what I really love to do.
Yeah, yeah. I have a thought on something for you. We'll talk about it off air really quick, but
Okay, okay.
just
Well,
hearing all of this. But yeah, wow. This was a really I'm glad that we do our thing because it makes these recordings flow very nicely. So
absolutely, yes.
you
This is
you
why we
guys are
have to
getting a very
plan.
well, yeah, you guys are getting a very well curated version of how we have conversations because both of us, at the very least, both of us are ADHD, and so we could y'all could only imagine what just like an off the cuff conversation. This is why our we had what's our record 5.5 hours at this
Like,
point,
yeah, just shy of 6 hours.
and that's why.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because y'all the circles.
Yes, exactly. We go off on tangents. So yeah,
We
we
really
do
do.
have planning meetings. We don't like write a script or anything, but we do
No,
kind of
no,
like
no.
pre-talk about what we want to talk about,
And
answer
hit it,
some
yeah.
questions, and then be
We
like,
get all the
okay,
rambling out. Yeah, we get all the
exactly, and the side
craziness out.
quests as we
Yeah.
call them. All right, big sister. Well,
All
yes, I know
right.
you're on a bit of a time crunch.
We good. This is
So,
perfect. So we
okay,
good.
awesome. So, yeah, thank you guys for stopping by and spending a little bit more time with us. I'm going to leave links in the description for both of our separate social media, plus all of our social media for a Hold Up. Let me call my sis. As Lamia alluded to, she's really just on Instagram. So, I'm kind of running our social media because TikTok and Instagram and Threads are
Oh
like
yeah.
my three that I'm on all the time. So we are on Instagram, TikTok, and Threads.
Mm-hmm.
And we also have a link tree where you can. I'm actually going to add the link to your podcast and my podcast to our link
Okay.
tree. So you'll be able to see like our joint stuff, but then also follow us on our separate journeys
Mm-hmm.
as well. I wanted to say also because I'm traveling again, I will be uploading my first video to YouTube in like over a year for my untethered travel
Oh yeah.
vlog series, and I'm super fucking excited about that. So yeah, again, I'll leave the links, and just excited to bring you guys along for that journey, and
Mm-hmm.
do something I've been wanting to do for a really long time.
Yes. Yeah, like she said, Boom Cat, Lamia Radiant, or y'all gotta go with me. Follow me. I'm on Spotify and all the platforms as well. And I have about 4 or 5 seasons, honestly. So if you really want to like see what I'm into, you know, what I be thinking, those earlier episodes are very rough. It was just me and my phone. But I actually have some cool interviews though, because it was the beginning of the quarantine, and so I have a lot of just interviews with friends of mine locally and stuff like that. Dancers, if you're into dance, it'll be a really cool catch up if you want to check those out.
Awesome. All right, big sister. As always, it's good chatting with you. I'll talk to you next
Same.
week.
Bye. Bye,
Bye.
sis.
Bye, sis.